Chapter 11, the scary chapter. The universal form. Let's start with this. The universal form is difficult to understand. We mentioned this already. The universal form is difficult to understand. We'll say it the other way. Is there anybody here that thinks the universal form is easy to understand? I don't see anybody's hand. Not only it's difficult to understand, but there are multiple descriptions of that which is difficult to understand, what makes it more difficult to understand. We will be discussing today the features of the universal form. And if you compare this description to Canto 2, Chapter 1, you would hardly recognize that they're speaking about the same thing. And then in Canto 2, Chapter 10, there's a description of the universal form, and it's quite different from Canto 2, Chapter 1, which is quite different from Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 11. Why is that? What's going on? Is it this, or is it that, or is it the other? Well, one way to answer that question is there are different ways of looking at the same thing. That's one way to describe it. Why there's such a vast difference. It's the same thing because the universal form is difficult to understand and it's so vast in its scope. Certainly, there can be different ways of seeing the same thing. It happens in this world. When different people see the same thing, they describe the same thing. It's not exactly like, the blind man and the elephant. And it's not just different aspects of the same thing. It's different angles of vision of the same thing. So it's not an easy to understand subject, universal form. Starting with that kind of question mark at the very beginning, let's proceed. Both in chapters 9 and chapter 10, Krishna has mentioned this universal form. In chapter 9, the reference was 3 different categories of persons who, in a very liberal way, Krishna considers to be his devotees. Remember that verse, we discussed it several times. 9:15. Ekatvena, prataktvena, bahuda, and Vishvato Mukham. Vishvato Mukham, that's the universal form. And there are some who worship the universal form. I don't know how they do that, but that's what it says they do. Just a little story, anecdotal. I mentioned this Ayurvedic doctor that I was seeing. So when I was seeing this Ayurvedic doctor, there was a nice devotee who was allowing me to stay at his home while then going back and forth to the Ayurvedic clinic because his place was reasonably close to the Ayurvedic clinic. And he was a nice devotee, without going into it. Very nice devotee. And his wife wasn't so much of a devotee, but she liked yoga. So she was, politely nagging. Come to see this yoga ashram. Yoga, not yoga, it's not an ashram. It's yoga place where I take yoga classes. And so she said it enough times, I understood it was important to her, so I went. It was way out in the countryside, countryside outside Bombay. You believe it? It's such a thing exists. It's a countryside outside Bombay. And there was a humongous trees all around. So we got out of the car and looked around, and they brought me over to where they were seated, and one person was giving his, live testimony. This cured me of this disease, and this saved me from that surgery, and I'm a believer. Amen. So hallelujah. And then the person in charge ushered me to a chair where they had a photograph of the universal form. And he said, I asked, what's your understanding of what's over there? That's a form of God, but the real deal is, it's just imaginary. The real deal is, he didn't use the word Brahman, effulgence, and the goal is to become one with the Brahman effulgence, but that was the dagger behind the cloak. That was what he was introducing his yoga students who became believers in yoga. The goal is to become one with Brahman. So that's how these people see the universal form. It's just a doorway to get to the impersonal Brahman. So different people see the same thing in different ways, is my point. In chapter 10, Krishna has mentioned that he pervades and supports the entire cosmic manifestation. Having mentioned the universal form in chapter 9 and mentioned that in chapter 10, Arjuna wants to know, can you show me that form? By which you pervade and support everything, but you exist separately. Can you show me that form? That's the essence of the first 7 verses of chapter 11. So I'll go through it quickly. And in the first verse, Arjuna says, Nashtamoha, my illusion is gone. I've heard from you. My doubts are gone. I understand your divinity, because he's made a strong point to, he's the source of everything. So I now understand it. I've heard from you in detail about the appearance and disappearance of every living entity, because that was in chapter 9. And I have realized your inexhaustible glories. I mean, if that which is inexhaustible, you can't realize the extent of it, but you can realize the inexhaustibleness of Krishna's glories. Everything. There isn't, to say it negatively, there isn't something that exists that's not from Krishna. Say it positively. Everything that exists is an expansion of Krishna's 2 energies. He's mentioned, chapter 9, spiritual, material, and he's in charge of both. They're moving under his direction. Though I see before me your actual position, O Supreme Form, as you have described yourself, I wish to see how you have entered into the cosmic manifestation. I want to see that form of yours. Or what Prabhupada writes in the purport, it's very nicely expressed. He desires to see Krishna in his universal form, to see how he is acting from within the universe, although he is apart from it. Because he said that more than once. So he wants to see that form. So there's sometimes we read in Prabhupada's books, the universal form is imaginary, and then what does that mean? It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean it's like a mirage. It's one of Krishna's forms. In the description of Brahma's morning, Brahma has a long life. It's made of many mornings and many days and then nights. And in the morning, when he wakes, one of his sadhanas is he doesn't just meditate on the universal form, he takes that impression of the universal form within his whole being. Because he's got to build the universe again, so he takes the blueprint or the image that the universe is going to look like. But it's not just a drawing, it's a form. He meditates and brings it within, because then he built the universe like that. So it's actually the form of the universe, which is replicated by each Brahma in each universe to build one. It's a universal form. Krishna's universal form, by which he enters, by which he is acting within the universe, although he is apart from it. So it's not imaginary in the sense that it doesn't exist. It's just fiction, like a dream. It just doesn't exist. It exists, but it's temporary. It's illusory in the sense that it's temporary. Manifest and then withdrawn. Because his other spiritual forms, they may be manifest within this world and withdrawn, but they're eternally existing before the universe exists, during the cosmic manifestation, and after cosmic annihilation. That's one of the Chaturshloki verses of the Bhagavatam. So it's illusory in that sense. Then he's asking for the vision to see this form. If you think that I am able to behold your cosmic form, then kindly show me that unlimited, universal, capital S self. So that's how it starts. And Krishna gives a little verbal description before he shows the form. See now my opulences. Chapter 10, this is chapter 11. See now my opulences. Hundreds of thousands of varied, divine, and multicolored forms. Oh, best of the Bharatas, see here the different manifestations of Adityas, Vasus, Rudras, Ashvini, Kumaras, and all the other demigods. Behold many wonderful things which no one has ever seen or heard of before, which is a little puzzling because Brahma saw it, and at least a partial incarnation Duryodhana saw, and for that matter, the members of the assembly where Duryodhana was planning to attack and harm Krishna, Krishna showed a partial manifestation. But the fullness of it, so realization has something to do with qualification and something else to do with mercy. So Krishna is giving Arjuna the full display. Question. Krishna is saying that no one has seen this before. Is there anyone else seeing this while Arjuna is seeing this? That was a good answer. That was quick. Sanjaya saw it because he had to describe it. So although Dhritarashtra is blind, he couldn't see it, he could hear it. We can hear it in disciplic succession, but seeing it is scary. O Arjuna, whatever you wish to see, behold at once in this body of mine, this universal form can show you whatever you now desire to see and whatever you may want to see in the future. Everything, moving and non-moving, is completely here in one place. It's kind of inconceivable. It's not like even a 3D movie or something. I mean, everything that exists all in one place, kind of like wrap around everything. There's nothing not present in the universal form. Everything's present in one place. It's not conceivable within our mind. But you cannot see me with your present eyes, therefore I give you divine eyes. Behold my mystic opulence. So it's the universal form is a manifestation of mystical opulence of Krishna. So that text 8 of chapter 11 ends that section, and the next is what Arjuna experiences or sees in his 3D experience. And the features of what he sees Arjuna describes it. So as Arjuna is describing it, Sanjaya is describing it. Arjuna sees all existence, as Krishna already introduced, all existence, immeasurable. How do you see that which is immeasurable? With spiritual eyes, with divine eyes, with great radiance in one place, with form. Without going through all the verses, it's quite a long chapter. Then Krishna sees, or Arjuna sees that which is frightening. The destruction feature, the devastation feature of the universal form. Kala Rupa. Now, one of the things we're going to be discussing this evening is kind of like an introduction to Bhagavad Gita, the 5 main topics, etc. And Kala is one of them, and Kala is another thing that's not easy to understand. It's very fascinating. It's spoken about least, and it's perhaps the most important. So he's seeing here the Kala Rupa, the devastating, devouring feature of Krishna, manifest in the universal form. That's scary. I mean, it's scary in the sense that we wish to live forever because we're eternal. But the identification with the temporary doesn't live forever. So it's scary. So Kala does at least 2 things or 3 things. At least 2 things. We discussed this already. In the process of creation, Mahavishnu glances over Pradhan, and as Mahavishnu glances over Pradhan, Rama Devi understands his desire, although he doesn't say it, but he just desires that 2 things actually. There are 2 ichhas, 2 desires. One, this reflection of my internal potency. She wants some service. Let me give her some service. The other ichha is the living entities. I wish for them to be freed from the darkness of ignorance and birth and death. Let me give them the opportunity for that. 2 desires. So the living entities are then transferred through the glance of Mahavishnu, transferred by Rama Devi, and one of her sub-potencies, one of her potencies is eternal time. Which, let's go over that. She's the potency of Vishnu, and she has sub-potencies. Now, Krishna says, time I am. So is Krishna one of Rama Devi's potencies? He's Shaktiman. But he invests her with some of his Shakti as sub-potencies of her. So time is multifaceted, in other words. So she takes eternal time and changes it, or modifies it, or transforms it to be time as we know it. Time as we know it means past, present, future time. So that's the time energy that's passed by Ramadevi through the glance of Vishnu. Time. Because you don't get creation, or things don't happen without time. Say it the other way. Things happen through the agency of time. And so time, as Krishna said in the previous chapters, he develops and devours everything. So that he does it is through the agency of his time energy. Time is needed to bring things into being, and time destroys things. And for some time, they seem to exist. Things don't happen without time. Time is an essential part of existence. They're in the eternal realm and in the past, present, future realm. Time is essential. Time is an energy, and time is non-different than Krishna. Time I am. Of course, you can say the energy, the internal energy, eternal time, is Krishna in the sense that the energy is not separated from the energetic. But what's the form of time look like, anyways? There's cartoons. He's a guy dressed in black. He's got a big, it's kind of like an instrument for harvesting grains, a big chopper over his shoulder, sometimes called the Grim Reaper. Time I am, the destroyer of all things. So, death personified. Death personified. So Arjuna sees this feature in the universal form, in this little section. It's frightening. Kalarupa. And then Arjuna asks Krishna, what's your mission? Who are you? I mean, he asked Krishna to show the form, and now he's looking at this form and going, yikes, saying, who are you? What's your mission? And that covers a number of verses, from verse number 9 to verse 31. This is just an overview. We're not going into all the details. And then Krishna says the celebrated verse, time I am, kalos me, the destroyer of all things. And then the universal form showing gnashing teeth with soldiers caught between his teeth, and these soldiers, Arjuna, these soldiers, by my existence, by the time energy, they've already been destroyed. They haven't been. The battle hasn't started yet, but the time energy, it's determined that they will be destroyed by the time energy. There can be instruments of the time energy that help destroy things, but it's the time energy that's destroying things. Or the universal form that pervades everything, but Krishna is existing separately. It's quite mysterious. Arjuna trembles, seeing what he's seeing, hearing what he's hearing. And he prays to the universal form. One of the prayers is to beg forgiveness from the universal form, or from Krishna, for seeing him as his friend, because the fierce and all-powerful feature of the universal form isn't somebody you make a friend with. So seeing that form, he's apologizing for, before treating him like a friend. Doing this and that and the other thing that friends do together. And, it's insulting to you. You're so great. And then, having said that, Arjuna asked the universal form, could you please withdraw this universal form? Too scary. And could you again assume your two-arm form? Because the universal form has unlimited arms and unlimited faces and unlimited legs and unlimitedness. Although within a form, so which form means, at least asking impersonalists, it's delimiting. So, and the absolute is without limits, and so you can't have form. But unlimited form. And he wants him to withdraw that unlimited form, show his two-arm form, the original form. So Krishna does that in steps. He withdraws the universal form, and then he shows his four-arm form. Let's read those verses. Text 4950, if you have your Bhagavad Gita with you. 11, 49, 50. You have been perturbed and bewildered by seeing this horrible feature of mine. Now let it be finished. My devotee, be free again from all disturbances with a peaceful mind. You can now see the form you desire. Sanjaya said to Dhritarashtra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, having spoken thus to Arjuna, displayed his real four-armed form, and at last showed his two-armed form, thus encouraging the fearful Arjuna. And seeing the two-armed form and then the four-armed form, Arjuna is relieved. And he's glorifying this two-armed form with a better understanding than he had before of what the two-armed form is. And that one can have relationship with that two-armed form in a very personal way. Seeing this human-like form, so very beautiful, I am now composed in mind, and I'm restored to my original nature. The Supreme Personality Godhead said, my dear Arjuna, this form of mine you are now seeing is very difficult to behold. Even the demigods are ever seeking the opportunity to see this form, which is so dear. By accepting Bhagavad Gita, then the conclusive statements given by Krishna are definitive. They're very important, very dear to his devotee, Arjuna, and very dear to any one of Krishna's devotees is this two-armed form. There may be curiosity, what's that one, what's the other one? But it's especially dear to his devotee. The form you are seeing with your transcendental eyes cannot be understood simply by studying the Vedas, nor by undergoing serious penances, nor by charity, nor by worship. It is not by these means that one can see me as I am. Now there's a whole explanation, not here but elsewhere. Seeing Krishna doesn't mean seeing Krishna. Meaning like the washerman or other examples of persons that saw Krishna at Sishupal. They saw Krishna. They didn't really see Krishna. They saw something different. Although they saw. Pashyati na pashyati. Seeing without seeing. So, but Arjuna is seeing and seeing. You're fully understanding what he's seeing. Then comes this celebrated verse. Only by undivided devotional service can one understand me. That's the context of that verse. Bhaktya tvananyaya shakya. Aham evam vidhorjuna. Gyatum drashtum chatatvena praveshtam cha parantapa. Only by undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am, standing before you, and can thus be seen directly. Only in this way can you enter into my mysteries, into the mysteries of my understanding. So say it negatively. Without bhakti, Krishna remains a mystery. And with bhakti, at least some degree of the mystery can be understood. So what's that degree of mystery that one can understand? Well, it's commensurate with one's faith. Going back to something that was stated earlier in chapters already covered. Recently, during our visit, the question came up once, and before I was here, the question came up in China. How do you understand the difference between a Paramatma realization and a mind realization? Remember that one? So I just sent out a more complete one. Did you send the more complete one? The more complete one? More complete one? Okay.
From the ISKCON Desire Tree.
Huh?
From ISKCON Desire Tree.
Okay, including that. Okay. So it's a nice topic, but an important verse from Brahma Samhita says, in Bhaktisiddhanta's language, because what's Brahma doing? Brahma's expressing his realization. Well, we take Brahma's realization as truth. And somebody else's realization may be their mind, which isn't truth. But they may be convinced in what their mind says. So how do we make a distinction between? So in Brahma Samhita, Brahma says, and Bhaktisiddhanta translates, Yadarshi yadarshi shraddha siddhi bhavati tadrashi. Now, I kind of had some fun yesterday evening with those young participants, helping them stay awake and not be distracted by describing the structure of the universe a little bit. And one of the region above the earthly realm in the Vedic model, I'll do it anyways. It's a flat earth picture. Now anybody knows the earth isn't flat. And there are people that would poo-poo, like condescendingly look at this really dumb, archaic, stupid picture that ancients thought that the earth is flat. But it's a misunderstanding of what the picture is. So Bhumandala it has topography, but it's describing the picture of the earth from a perspective of the universe. It's a model of the universe where it's not the earth is flat, but the plane in which the earth is resting is a mandala. It's a two-dimensional with some topography picture. And above the earthly realm is where Siddhaloka is. Siddhas, Charanas, Gandharvas, Apsaras, etc. So there's a Siddhaloka. However, fasten your seatbelt. There's another Siddhaloka. In fact, there's two other Siddhalokas, at least. There's one Siddhaloka that's in conjunction with Brahmaloka, which is at the top of the universe. It's kind of like a satellite of Brahmaloka. I don't hear much about it, but it's Siddhaloka. And there's another Siddhaloka, in case you want to get confused. The third Siddhaloka is a term that's sometimes used to describe the spiritual sky. The whole of the spiritual sky, we know it as Brahmajyoti. It's sometimes described by Rupa Goswami and others as Siddhaloka, a place of perfected souls. So there are different perfections, different degrees of perfection. So there's different Siddhalokas. One term meaning different things, in case you want to get confused. But so we need to follow our acharyas and understand what's the meaning, according to the application or the context, what's the proper meaning. So back to this universal form. It's real. It's one of Krishna's forms. Again, every morning when Brahma awakens, part of his morning sadhana is he brings within himself the universal form. So he has a clear impression within his mind what to do. He has to build one of these. At least some portion of it, because some portion of it is not destroyed at the end of his day or during his night, it's still there. But the lower portions have to be reconstructed. So he gets this impression of the universal form. So that's another picture of what the universal form is. It's something that he's meditating on. And then there's this form that Arjuna is seeing. It's not just Brahma's meditation. It's his question is how that form of his, by which he's all pervasive within this creation, but at the same time existing separately. So he shows the form, he withdraws the form, shows his four-arm form, shows his two-arm form, and says, this two-arm form is rarely seen. The form you are seeing with your transcendental eyes cannot be understood simply by study of the Vedas, nor by undergoing serious penances, nor by charity, nor by worship. It is not by these means that one can see me as I am. Then this Bhaktyatvananyaya Shakya verse. Only by this undivided devotional service can one see me as I am, standing before you directly. Only in this way can you enter into the mysteries of my understanding. So the Vedas are mysterious. It's truth, but it's mysterious truth. And mysterious truth is back to this Yadarshi Shadha. That the mysterious truth is revealed differently to different persons according to their faith. We can say according to their Krishna consciousness, or you can say according to their connection with Paramatma, their connection with the Supreme. because it's the agency of Paramatma that coordinates all things. Supposing you can't see that coordination, you can't see the lawmaker behind the laws. Supposing you can, then you're like Arjun's position. But the ability to see, the divine eyes by which to see either the universal form, the two-arm form, or the four-arm form, it's by mercy. And supposing you don't have mercy or sufficient mercy, well, you have to become more qualified. And that's what our sadhana practice is. On the one hand, to clear off the covering, and the other hand, to awaken our original what? Original attachment to Krishna. But that attachment to Krishna that's now forgotten, covered, distorted, mistaken, illusion, subject to defects. And that's the equipment we have to work with. And it's not quite comfortable. Especially when you come to Bhagavad Gita and it's like, what's going on here? Here's the long purport, text 55. My dear Arjuna, mat karma krit, mat paramo, mad bhakta sangha varjitaha, nirvaira sarvabhuteshu ya sa mam eti pandava. And again, long purport. This is the final verse of the chapter. My dear Arjuna, kind of like putting the bow on top of the wrapper, on top of the gift that he's giving Arjuna. He who engages in my pure devotional service, free from the contamination of fruitive activities and mental speculation. Does that sound familiar? Sound familiar? The definition of bhakti? Anyabhilasha shunyam jnana karma janavritam. So where did Rupa Goswami come up with that one? Answer, it's right here. He who engages in my pure devotional service, free from the contaminations of fruitive activities and mental speculation. He who works for me, even when you're in the office or when you're going to school or when you're doing whatever you're doing. Cooking in the kitchen, going shopping, dealing with a problem, dealing with it's New Year's and all the mails you get from people saying, Happy New Year. Okay. He who worked for me, who makes me the supreme goal of his life, and who is friendly to every living being. Very nice, huh? Friendly to every living being. Nirvairayar sarvabhuteshu. He certainly comes to me. Mama nusmara yudhyacha. That phrase, Mama nusmara yudhyacha. The type of yoga that is the topmost yoga. When the mind, in fact, is so immersed in Krishna that good fortune and ill fortune and the mix they don't distract you. Here's a nice way. I'll just end with this. Something I heard Prabhupada say I really like. I remember very clearly, it was a hot summer day in New York. Prabhupada seated in the Vyasasan. Prabhupada saying, sometimes Krishna will test you. Not only sometimes, lots of times. You say to Krishna, my dear Lord Krishna, I simply want to be engaged in your devotional service. Please accept me. And Krishna says, oh, you wish to be engaged in my devotional service? What about a little sense gratification, And the devotee says, no, I only want you. Prabhupada, that's very much like I'm doing. So then Krishna may say, what about a little obstacle? What about a little pain? What about a little misery? You sure you want me? And the devotee says, this is unimportant to me. My being connected to you is all important to me. Please keep me connected to you. And Krishna says, looks like he really wants to be connected to me, wants my shelter, wants my loving service. Let me give myself to him. So in our sadhana, or in our everyday life, there's some testing. There's a knock on the door and, is anybody home? And, it depends on what's going on, whether you give the answer you give. So Krishna may be examining. We spent a lot of time discussing this during the Christmas weekend. Krishna's examining Mahaprabhu's examining Sanatana Goswami, and then others examples and other examples. So Krishna's examining us also. Our life is an exam, and the end of life is the final exam. Where's your mind going to go? Your mind is going to go to that which you're attached. So you practice in this life attachment to Krishna means detachment from matter. Say it again. Attachment to Krishna means detachment from matter. You can't have both. You can't have attachment to matter and attachment to Krishna and have a party. Not how it works. That there may be involvement with matter, but it's not with attachment to matter. Anasaktasya vishayan. Without attachment. Asakti and anasakti. Attachment and without attachment. So there can be all kinds of material facility. Or not. And the mind is undisturbed if there is, and undisturbed if there isn't, if one is attached to Krishna. Supposing you're not attached to Krishna. Like some of us are not so attached to Krishna, then what? Sometimes I'm feeling happy and sometimes I'm feeling other than happy. And I'm hankering for happiness. What's happiness? Getting that thing that I want. That's what happiness is. And when you get that thing that you want, is that what happiness is? Something's missing. So then you want something more. You add. So I just go back to the last verse of the chapter. This unalloyed devotional service is the means to have Krishna's association. And as long as there's alloys or a mix in devotion, then it's fair to partly cloudy. It's not clear skies. And sometimes it becomes stormy. And then sometimes the clouds go away, and then sometimes the clouds come back again, and the picture keeps moving. And it's never stable, and it's never real happiness. Never. It's not it's not the nature of this place. Certified by the creator of the place. It's meant as a place to help us understand who we really are. And, we're eternal beings meant to be in eternal service of Krishna. Now we've all heard it, we all understand it, and we're not there yet. Okay. You ready? Okay. So I guess that's the cue for discussion time. Any thoughts anybody would like to add, or questions, or complaints? Stay close. Don't go away. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. My question is, Arjuna asked for the universal form to be shown, and in the assembly, also Krishna wanted to show the power because they were going to arrest Krishna, Duryodhana's team. So those two incidents make sense. But then why to Mother Yashoda, not once, twice, the universal form, and make Mother Yashoda bewildered, even though she's
Why
an
not?
eternal associate?
Why not? You got a problem with what Krishna wants? Krishna isn't doing the right thing? You're smarter than Krishna?
No, I was just wondering, she's a pure devotee,
I'm sorry.
eternal associate.
He's giving her a certain experience. The spiritual world is filled. That was the experience. It's done by his Yogamaya, and with the same Yogamaya, he covered her from that experience. She forgot that experience. Now, Shukadeva Goswami didn't forget, but she forgot, but because she became covered by Yogamaya. So he's giving. So why shouldn't there be, or say it positively, there's all variety in the spiritual world. Why shouldn't there be variety? So he's giving her a variety of emotion. You know, supposing a mother looks inside her little boy's mouth and sees what Mother Yasoda saw. That's not going to happen, but that's what happened to Mother Yasoda. She's put into this space, a condition where she's wondering what's going on, and it suggests this and suggests that and suggests the other thing. Looks for a nice rational explanation. None of them work. She rules out each one, and then Yogamaya withdraws that feeling and remembrance of that experience, whatever it is. He's my son. I have to feed him. He gave her, a transcendental emotion experience. Why not? Anything else?
Can I ask one more question?
And let's see if there's somebody else. You'll come back. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Another question related to universal form. In the battlefield, when Krishna showed the universal form, Arjuna is able to see it, Sanjaya is able to see it. And Arjuna is given the transcendental or spiritual vision to see it by Krishna. But when the same or a partial version of the universal form was shown to Duryodhana, everybody in the assembly was able to see it.
That's right.
From my understanding. So
That's my understanding also.
So the spiritual vision is needed only for the full universal form, but not the other, or how do we understand?
Sounds good. I haven't heard an Acharya explanation of that question. Krishna enabled others to see so they could see. If Krishna doesn't enable others to see, they couldn't see. So it wasn't like targeted only for Duryodhana. It was everyone was like, they stopped. They were going to attack Krishna, so everyone stopped. And then he withdrew the feature. So, because there was a purpose, so he enabled and they could see. It's not that only the major, all universal form then one can see, only with eyes. He gave the eyes for them to see, otherwise they couldn't see. Anyone else? Well, there's somebody else in the room who wants to ask a question, but I'm just going to be very patient, sadhu, and let you become a little uncomfortable until somebody raises their hand. Oh, thoughtful souls. Okay, we'll come back to her. Bring the microphone up front again.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. This is about trying to understand Canto 2.
Trying to understand
Canto 2,
Canto
Chapter 1
2,
and some
Chapter
other
1,
sections. For me, it's when I read that, I kind of rush through it because it's very, compared to other sections of Bhagavatam, it's not very it's not very attractive. Like it's very dry and vague and hard to understand. So, but it's very elaborately.
Well, that's your subjective. To say it's dry, that's quite
for,
subjective. It's not dry.
For
but,
myself.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So how much effort should I put in to try to understand? Is that like, because most of the time I skip through some of the purports or verses, or because I'm just wanting to finish the section because it's so hard to understand those things. So do we really need to put effort and try to understand those sections, even though it's about the universal form and all the details?
Why don't you try this? Instead of like all the details, ask yourself, what was the question that was asked by Maharaj Parikshit, and why is this responsive to the question asked by Maharaj Parikshit? What's the importance? In principle, not the detail. In principle, what's important? You know, the answer, one answer that Prabhupada gives is, Shukadeva Goswami wants to give a personal conception of the Supreme to persons who don't have a personal conception of the Supreme. They only have a conception of matter, not a conception of the Supreme as a person. So one of the purposes, a principal purpose of Chapter 1, is to help people who don't have a conception of God as a person to formulate one through the medium of nature. A personal conception of God through the medium of nature, features of nature. So with that, and there may be other, and you can go through looking at the chapter, not so much becoming, you know, a scientist or a scholar about the details and how the details fit in, make the puzzle picture clear. But how is this helping the purpose of Shukadeva Goswami's answering Maharaj Parikshit's question? What's the question? How is it addressing his question? Because it's sequential. When you move on to Chapter 2, the recommendation is to leave behind the universal form conception and take the Paramatma conception. And after establishing the Paramatma conception, leave the Paramatma conception behind and take the Bhagavan conception. So start with a personal conception. That's the purpose. And does it fulfill the purpose? Anyway, so you start asking those kinds of questions as opposed to the details and details and details of Chapter 1. What is the universal form per Shukadeva Goswami's description of it? And along with the universal form, you read carefully and you'll find, and keeping the mind fixed on the personal form, or keeping one's mind fixed upon the Supreme. Along with everything, Madgatena Antaratmana, or the mind absorbed in Madchitta, mind absorbed in thought of Krishna, is essential part of any Bhagavad Dharma teaching. So how does this help the fixing one's mind on the Bhagavan? Because it's too technical. Okay. Behind you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I was just thinking about the difference between the two-hand form of Krishna and four-hand form. So as you explained that with the two-hand we have heard about a lot of pastimes like personal connections with that two-hand form. And we also, I understood that the four-hand form is like seeing him in an opulent way. So is that the only difference?
That's not the only difference. It's a difference.
The four-hand form is a Vaikuntha.
There's different aspects of the four-arm form. The Purusha avatars are not in Vaikuntha. The Purusha avatars are forms of the Lord that deal with the material creation. The Lord of Vaikuntha doesn't directly deal with the material creation. The Purusha avatars do. So don't be too narrow. You're analytical. It's fine. Be analytical. Be who you are, but don't restrict it. There's the features of the four-arm form are very wonderful. Diverse. Sometimes Krishna shows his universal, shows his four-arm form. Depending upon the kind of feeling of love or regard that one has for Krishna, he'll show that form. Okay? And including in his pastimes. Something in the back? Anyone? Yes, I thought so. Uh-oh.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
So I have a question, Maharaj. Like Lord Krishna showing the universal form to his close devotees, right? Is there anywhere where Lord Krishna has actually shown a glimpse of life in Vaikuntha or Goloka?
Oh, yeah. Here's a real easy one. The four Kumaras. They didn't just stand at the gate, they went inside. I mean, there's the scene at the gate, but they also went inside. In Brihat Bhagavatamrita, Narada goes inside. Gopakumar goes inside. And they, the description of their experience, what they see, there's details and details and details.
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Is that respond?
Yeah.
You're asking? So like what goes on there? Is that like kind of like that's the question? What's it really like there? We hear about it's a nice place. What goes on there? That's a natural question. Fortunately, Scripture discloses, because otherwise we won't know.
Right.
Okay, we're done. Srila Prabhupada ki? Yeah.